Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you are fine wherever you are. Welcome to another episode of Raw Politics. There is one question that elicits emotions. If you were to ask for the real reason why Mount Kenya left William Ruto, you will get very funny answers. First, you will meet those who are saying Mount Kenya has not left William Ruto. Now, these are perhaps people from Mount Kenya who support the president. Now, when we say Mount Kenya has left William Ruto, we are not talking of absolute numbers here. Politics is never about absolute, but about majority. Majority of the people of Mount Kenya who are supporting William Ruto with all they have, people who went early in the morning to vote for William Ruto, majority of them hate him to the point that they are wishing him dead. And if you ask why that change of heart, like I said, you will get very diverse answers. But this is not the first time such a question has arisen. You see, Mount Kenya's rebellion against William Ruto is not unique. I want to take you back to 2017 when the people of Mount Kenya overwhelmingly voted for Uhuru Kenyatta to be president a second time. Ladies and gentlemen, when this happened, the people of Mount Kenya gave the highest turnout in their history of voting after the reintroduction of multi-party democracy. The people of Mount Kenya gave Uhuru Kenyatta 87% turnout. That was very high, ladies and gentlemen. And they voted for him, if you can recall, twice in 1 year because the election had been nullified and we had to go for a repeat poll. These are people who did everything to ensure that Uhuru Kenyatta had his second term. And they said that they loved the idea of the Big Four agenda enough that they would support Uhuru Kenyatta and, of course, with his deputy, William Ruto, to continue with the good agenda in their second term. But when Uhuru Kenyatta, out of selfishness, of course, brought in Raila Odinga into his government, the same people who voted overwhelmingly for Uhuru Kenyatta turned against Uhuru Kenyatta and hated the man. And interestingly, just like now, then they gave very funny reasons why they no longer liked Uhuru Kenyatta. Two of the reasons were very prominent. One, that Uhuru Kenyatta had betrayed the people of Mount Kenya by abandoning his promises. And two, that the same Uhuru Kenyatta had betrayed William Ruto. And since the people of Mount Kenya do not like betrayal, they were no longer going to stand with Uhuru Kenyatta. These two reasons are what was peddled. Every person who asked, why are you turning against Uhuru Kenyatta? He would be told Uhuru Kenyatta has abandoned the Big Four and Uhuru Kenyatta has betrayed William Ruto. And as you know, we don't like betrayal. But if you went back and looked into details, you would find that these were cover-up. The real reason was something they were not proud of saying. For instance, Uhuru Kenyatta brought in Raila Odinga into his government on March 9th, 2018. Ladies and gentlemen, Uhuru Kenyatta was sworn in into office in November of 2017. To be specific, on the 29th of November. So, this is somebody who was barely 4 months in office. To be exact, Uhuru Kenyatta had not even completed assembling his new government. So many people had not been appointed. Yet, there were people who would look at you in the face and tell you they were rebelling with Uhuru Kenyatta because he had abandoned his promises. That was not true, ladies and gentlemen. Uhuru Kenyatta had just served for a very short time. It was not enough to determine whether he was straying away from his Big Four agenda. Let's come to the second reason, that Uhuru Kenyatta had betrayed William Ruto, yangu kumi ya Ruto kumi, and because the people of Mount Kenya don't entertain betrayal. You've even heard that recently, that we don't like traitors. We don't like somebody who betrays us because we never betray anybody. And it was peddled with a lot of confidence and conviction that you would believe it, that these people were, if we promise you to vote for you, we will vote for you. Well, history was having serious doubt on whatever it is they were claiming. Because these people of Mount Kenya were handed over power by one Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. How did the people who hate betrayal pay that man back? If you remember history, they repaid him by serious betrayal. Even one who was close to them, like Tom Mboya, how was he repaid? Was he repaid with kindness? Those who were there will tell you Tom Mboya was gunned down like a dog. Is that, ladies and gentlemen, how you repay those who stick with you? And before you say those were actions of individual, the people of Mount Kenya didn't approve of them, I can tell you that after betraying Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, if what Martha Karua explained is anything to go by, the people of Mount Kenya went to take an oath that a Luo should never take leadership of the country. That is the people, not leaders, the people themselves, taking an oath in 1969 to the effect that a Luo should never lead. That is after getting rid of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not a team that hates betrayal. That is a team that has normalized political betrayal. Come to 1992, there is clamor for multi-party democracy. Jaramogi again is leading the pack. He asks them, I'm an old man, support me this last time, I vie. They agree to support him. Jaramogi Oginga Odinga goes to the ballot believing that he will be supported. What happened? At the ballot, the people of Mount Kenya divided their votes between Matiba and Kibaki. Ladies and gentlemen, is that a people who hate betrayal? Help. Help us bring multi-party, we will support you for president. You help them bring multi-party, they divide their votes between their kin. I want to tell you as I continue that this does not mean that other communities are not or are superior or better. I am just painting for you a picture that when you say you hate betrayal, and that is the reason as to why you no longer support Uhuru Kenyatta, history doesn't support it. And so there must be a reason why you are turning against your own Uhuru Kenyatta, which you are not proud of saying. In 2002, the agreement between Mwai Kibaki and Raila Odinga was very simple and public. Support me for president, I'll amend the constitution and make you an executive prime minister. A very simple MOU. Raila Odinga then went ahead and campaigned for Kibaki as if he was the one running. In fact, to make matters worse, Kibaki himself was taken ill. He was mostly on a wheelchair. Raila Odinga traversed the country campaigned and delivered the victory to Kibaki. So the people who hate betrayal, the people who would rather dump their own if he embraces betrayal, how did they react? Raila Odinga was reminded that an MOU is just a piece of paper, that it was a tool to get to power. Now that they were in power, it was useless. He was like told utadu. It became so bad that by 2005, Kibaki had fired Raila Odinga and these people from government, a government that they formed. Did the people of Mount Kenya rebel? Did you see rebellion? Because that was not so long ago. Did you see rebellion? People rebelling and saying, we can't allow that. Raila Odinga did this for you. He stood with you and you promised to give him something. Give him something, or Kibaki, we are abandoning you. No, they didn't. In fact, when Kibaki was rigging elections of 2007, the people of Mount Kenya solidly stood behind him. When I say solidly, I mean solidly stood behind him. So are these people qualifying as those who hate betrayal or those who have normalized betrayal? So when they gave their two reasons that Uhuru Kenyatta had strayed from his agenda, it was too soon, but that they hated betrayal, it is not true. So what was the real reason why they turned against their son? Well, believe it or not, it had everything to do with Raila Odinga being brought into government and by extension bringing Luos into government. That, ladies and gentlemen, is why people who had voted for Uhuru Kenyatta twice in a year were willing to abandon that government and be part of the opposition simply because they couldn't share a table or a podium or a government with Raila Odinga and of course with Luos. Now, if you are like, no, that is so far-fetched, how could you come to that conclusion? Well, fast forward. They supported William Ruto, and the argument was that William Ruto had good policies, that they liked what William Ruto had promised. Excellent. That is very convincing. But then you see, William Ruto got into power, and since he got into power, he has consistently, ladies and gentlemen, implemented what he promised. Do you remember what people highlighted as the problem with William Ruto's manifesto? They said, if you've forgotten, that manifesto was too detailed. It was too detailed for a manifesto. I was seeing these political analysts, the political commentators, the scientists, the professors saying, that is not what a manifesto should be. This is too detailed. Meaning every person who voted for William Ruto knew what he was going to do. And since he took over, exactly what he promised in his manifesto is what William Ruto has been pursuing. So if you voted for William Ruto because you liked his policies and whatever he promised, why do you abandon him? Why do you abandon that Ruto? Not only that, why do you even try to overthrow him? But not only that, when you fail, why do you even openly and publicly advocate for him to die? Why? Here is an example. You see, after elections, around March of 2023, Raila Odinga went to the street with his supporters, mostly Luos. They demonstrated. It was violent as usual. Where do you think the Mount Kenya people were when the people supporting Raila Odinga were saying that William Ruto is a bad leader, he has not done this, this and that? Where do you think the people of Mount Kenya were in March of 2023? They were solidly behind President William Ruto, enumerating the things that he did. Ladies and gentlemen, around July of 2023, there was also another demonstration, the one where they were putting sufurias on their head. Where do you think the Mount Kenya people were? They were with William Ruto, saying that William Ruto had reduced or lowered the cost of living. They would enumerate that. But when after that, William Ruto and Raila Odinga met in Mombasa around the same time, July 2023, and Rigathi came out of that meeting and told Kenyans that Raila Odinga wanted to join the government. And when these people from Mount Kenya saw the formation of the National Dialogue at Bomas, that, ladies and gentlemen, is the time they started questioning Ruto. Yes. And it became so pronounced that Rigathi Gachagua, who had been very loyal, a yes sir man, now started openly criticizing and disagreeing with the president, especially on the issue of that dialogue. If you can remember, he would even mock the likes of Ichung'wah and Aaron Cheriot as very idle people to sit in that particular dialogue committee. So you have people who have no problem with William Ruto as long as Raila Odinga and his supporters are in the position. They have no problem with William Ruto. They are willing to defend him the way they defended Uhuru Kenyatta. Even though Uhuru Kenyatta had not delivered on everything he promised in his first term, I told you he was overwhelmingly re-elected. But then when he brought Raila Odinga, all of a sudden Uhuru Kenyatta has not delivered and Uhuru Kenyatta is a traitor. And the person they supported, who is William Ruto, they said they did that because they hated betrayal, and number two, because they believed in him and believed in his policies. William Ruto has not changed a single policy of his. Yet, the same people are now wishing William Ruto dead. Why do you think that is so? Let us not guess. Let us go with their own comments. Wamaua, when William Ruto finally brought Raila Odinga into government, Wamaua said that imagine William Ruto brought somebody to our kitchen, that is the treasury. She was almost shedding tears. The crowd that was there was almost weeping. The lady was in Murang'a, and the crowd in Murang'a were almost crying, wondering how Ruto could take somebody to their kitchen, meaning the treasury is their kitchen, and somebody else, especially a Luo, should not be there. Because you see, they have not complained when somebody else is brought there. But when somebody from Luo Nyanza was brought, I told you can find those clips. Wamaua was almost crying. Why? Because deep down they believe Luos do not deserve such. They are supposed to be making noise in the opposition. If that was an isolated case, look at one Mutahi Kahiga. Before he made the so-called unfortunate remarks, which in my opinion was just speaking what they always say, Mutahi Kahiga was complaining how Ruto could write off debt for the people of Western and Nyanza. As if we eat the sugar, he said. As if we also eat the sugarcane. He couldn't believe that people who didn't vote for Ruto were getting their debts written off. That is impossible. The writing off of debt is a preserve of the coffee farmers and others. How dare you do it there? That is the notion. That is how they feel, ladies and gentlemen. And if that is not enough, Methu was on top of a vehicle wondering why William Ruto was developing Homa Bay, yet the people of Homa Bay never voted for him. And Rigathi Gachagua, to sum it up, said that Kenyans were angry at William Ruto because he took development to Luo Nyanza. The people of Mount Kenya, ladies and gentlemen, left a government that they overwhelmingly voted for, that is the government of Ruto, because William Ruto brought in Raila Odinga and by extension Luos. Just like it happened during Uhuru Kenyatta, it happened now. I have told you why William Ruto had to bring in Luos on board at a greater risk, but he had to bring them nonetheless. And that is why the people of Mount Kenya left. Now, when I say the people of Mount Kenya, and you are there as a supporter of William Ruto and you are wondering, what does this guy mean? When you analyze politics, you don't talk about absolutes. We are not talking of 100%. We know there are people in Mount Kenya who are supporting William Ruto genuinely and 100%. Just like we know very well that during the elections of William Ruto, there were people in Lowland who stood with William Ruto through thick and thin. But that does not mean that majority of Luos voted for Ruto. Majority of Luos voted otherwise. That is what I'm referring to here. I'm saying that when I say Mount Kenya, I'm not including you who is a supporter of Ruto. I'm saying what a majority are feeling. And if you say, oh, this thing has nothing to do with Raila, you see, you are reading too much. We love Raila Odinga. When Raila Odinga left local politics, in fact, even handed over the party leader position to Nyong'o and said, let me go do international politics. Let me go for AUC. When every other Kenyan was behind Raila Odinga, guess which region vehemently, openly, and shamelessly opposed him? To the point of even writing emails to presidents asking them not to vote for Raila, openly celebrating the Djibouti candidate. And when Raila Odinga lost, the region openly celebrated Raila Odinga's loss. So this is not something that people are hiding anymore. The only reason as to why saying this is not popular today is because in their vendetta against Ruto, the people of Mount Kenya have realized that they need Luos. And so for that reason, moving forward, you will hear how Luos are very good people. Luos are our friends. Luos are our in-laws. We have lived together. The people who are trying to bring conflict between us should be ashamed. It will be that because they need Luos in their vendetta against William Ruto. And why am I saying vendetta? When you meet an adult, and that adult, somebody who has basic education, looks at you in the eye and tells you that given a choice between a dog and William Ruto, they would vote for a dog, then that is not politics anymore. That is an issue of hate. You've reached at a point where you would rather William Ruto die just because you don't like him. So it is not about 2027 for these people is not about good leadership. Not at all. They said, and they are repeating publicly and as official statement, that the only agenda they have, they don't have anything to counter what Ruto is doing. No. If you ask Rigathi Gachagua, what are you going to do to ensure that Kenyans have modest houses, especially the poor? He will say nothing. He'll just tell you that when I take over, the first thing is to scrap that affordable housing program. So they don't have an agenda. What they're telling you is what we will do is to undo everything that William Ruto has done. Not to replace it with something better, but just to make sure that anything that William Ruto did is no longer part of this nation. That is not politics of ideology. That is not politics where people are competing on merit or saying, I have a better leader. No, this is where you are saying, I am going to remove Ruto from power for bringing in Raila Odinga and Luos into a government that we formed, the same way they did for Uhuru Kenyatta from 2018. They said, Uhuru Kenyatta and your project Raila Odinga, we are going to vote for Ruto to punish you. And after voting for Ruto to punish Uhuru Kenyatta, now they are saying, because they no longer need William Ruto, you hear them praising Uhuru Kenyatta and calling him their king. For now, even if Uhuru Kenyatta was to vie, they would overwhelmingly vote for Uhuru Kenyatta. What I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, as a recap, is that the main reason why the people of Mount Kenya are against Ruto's government is because William Ruto brought in Raila Odinga and by extension Luos into this government. And that is why they walked out. And to punish William Ruto, they have put up a coalition to go into election of 2027 to remove William Ruto from power. It is not an election of ideologies. In 2027, ladies and gentlemen, you have only two camps. One camp called Team Vendetta, whose only job, whose only goal is to remove somebody by the name William Ruto from power. And the other camp is Team Progress, who are saying this country for over 60 years has been stagnating, not making the difficult decisions. We need to make those decisions to leave our country in a position where it is supposed to be. So the choice will be very simple: Team Progress and Team Vendetta. But I wanted just to tell you that somebody should not lie to you that all of a sudden someone who was supporting housing program, somebody who was supporting universal health care, all of a sudden now sees these things to be wrong, coincidentally when Raila Odinga joins government. That is not true. For you to believe that, you must be politically naive. I wanted to share that with you, ladies and gentlemen. If you found value in this video, let me know in the comment section. If you like raw politics, subscribe to the channel. And if you want to know why Luos are better off voting for William Ruto come 2027, watch this video.